The massive Confederation diplomatic vessel Grand Unity drifted silently in the void of deep space, its hulking form dwarfing the 5 small ships that approached from the direction of the Sol system. Aboard the Grand Unity, Admiral Thrix adjusted his ceremonial collar as he peered at the holographic display. "That's it. That's their entire delegation," he asked, mandibles clicking in amusement. High Diplomat Vorla nodded, her crystalline skin refracting light as she moved. "Indeed, this species calls themselves humans. They've only recently developed faster than light travel. Their ships are so compact," observed General Cowell from the military division, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "No wonder they took so long to reach us after we sent the invitation." The Galactic Confederation had detected unusual energy signatures from Earth's first warp tests 3 cycles ago. As was standard protocol for potentially intelligent species, they dispatched an automated diplomatic beacon with coordinates for a first contact meeting. Admiral Thrix leaned forward. "Look at their design. So boxy and utilitarian. No aesthetic consideration at all." The lead human ship established a communication link. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a human male with close-cropped gray hair and a weathered face. "This is Admiral James Reed of Earth United Space Force. On behalf of humanity, I extend greetings to the Galactic Confederation." Vorla stepped forward. "Welcome, Admiral Reed. I am High Diplomat Vorla, and we accept your greetings. We are surprised by the modest size of your delegation." Reed's expression remained neutral. "We believe quality matters more than quantity, High Diplomat. Our ships may be few, but they represent the best Earth has to offer." General Cowell made a dismissive gesture. "Your vessels appear to lack basic defensive capabilities by our standards. How did you manage interstellar travel with such primitive technology?" A flash of something, perhaps annoyance, crossed Reed's face before he replied. "We're an adaptable species, General. We make do with what we have." "Admirable," said Vorla, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Perhaps we should proceed with the diplomatic formalities. Your species will need to understand its place in the greater galactic community." For the next several hours, the Confederation representatives outlined the complex structure of their alliance. 27 species across 300 star systems, governed by a hierarchical council based on technological advancement and military strength. "Given your current development level," Vorla explained, "humans would enter as a Category 4 civilization, a protected species under Confederation guidance." "Protected?" Reed questioned. "For your own safety, of course," General Cowell interjected. "Your technology is centuries behind even our most recent members. Without our protection, you'd be easy targets for the Meridian Empire or other hostile forces." Reed's jaw tightened slightly. "And what does this protection entail?" Vorla displayed a document on the shared screen. "Simply put, restrictions on further military development, supervised colonization of new worlds, and contribution of natural resources to the Confederation in exchange for technological assistance. Standard terms for emerging species." "I see," Reed said carefully. "And if we find these terms unacceptable?" Admiral Thrix laughed, a harsh mechanical sound. "Then you remain isolated in your tiny corner of the galaxy. The void is dangerous for small, defenseless species." Reed studied the gathered aliens. "We'll need time to consult with Earth's government before making any decisions." "Of course," Vorla said with practiced diplomacy. "Take all the time you need. Though I should mention, the Meridians have been expanding toward your sector. Without Confederation protection, they may take an interest in your world." "Is that a threat?" Reed asked quietly. "Merely an observation of galactic reality," Thrix replied. "Your 5 little ships would hardly deter them." Reed nodded slowly. "We'll return with our answers soon. Thank you for this enlightening meeting." After the communications ended, the human ships turned back toward Earth. "What an unremarkable species," Thrix commented. "Did you see their primitive weapon mounts? I doubt they could penetrate even our standard shields." Vorla tilted her head. There was something in the human's eyes I found disconcerting. General Cowell waved dismissively. They'll accept our terms. What choice do they have with that tiny fleet? They're practically defenseless in galactic terms. As the human ships accelerated away, none of the Confederation leaders noticed the detailed scans being run on their vessel, or the fact that the seemingly primitive human ships were transmitting vast amounts of data back to Earth. Admiral Reed sat in his command chair, eyes fixed on the retreating form of the Grand Unity. "Send everything to Earth Command," he ordered quietly, "and prepare a full briefing on what we've learned today." His executive officer nodded. Their arrogance was unexpected. "Sir." Reed's lips formed a thin smile. "Their underestimation of us, however, might prove useful." 6 months after the first contact, Earth's unified government convened in the underground complex beneath Geneva. Maps and holographic displays covered the walls, showing the known territories of the Galactic Confederation and the encroaching Meridian Empire. Admiral Reed stood before the Earth Defense Council, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. "Ladies and gentlemen, we face a simple choice. Accept subordinate status in the Confederation, or prepare to defend ourselves." President Morgan, a stern woman with salt and pepper hair, leaned forward. "The Confederation thinks we're primitive. How do we leverage that?" "We build," Reed replied, "but not in the way they expect." The Council approved Project Deception that night. For the next 2 years, Earth would appear to follow the expected path of a developing space-faring civilization, while secretly preparing for a different future. Dr. Tom Winters, head of the Advanced Weapons Division, pushed his glasses up his nose as he addressed his team in the Lunar Research Facility. "The aliens think bigger means better. Their ships are massive because they haven't solved the energy density problems we cracked last decade." He displayed the schematics for a new weapon system. "We can pack 5 times the firepower in 1/10 the space. Their arrogance blinds them to our potential." His chief engineer, Lisa Patel, nodded as she studied the designs. "They've built their technology around crystal-based energy matrices. They can't imagine our quantum condensate approach would work." "Exactly," Winters said with a grim smile. "Their scanning technology won't even register what we're building as weapons." Meanwhile, at the Mars Training Facility, Captain Marcus Wilson drilled the newly formed Space Combat Corps relentlessly. Unlike the rigid formations favored by the Confederation, Wilson taught fluid, unpredictable tactics. "Again," he shouted as the simulator showed his pilots' formations breaking apart. "The Confederation flies in perfect geometric patterns. The Meridians use overwhelming numbers. Neither expects a force that fights like water, flowing, splitting, and reforming where least expected." A young pilot named Jackson wiped sweat from his brow. "Sir, how can 50 of our ships stand against their fleets of thousands?" Wilson's smile was cold. "Because we're not building warships as they understand them. We're building something new." In the orbital shipyards above Earth, construction proceeded day and night. To casual observation, Earth was building a modest fleet of conventional vessels, exactly what the Confederation expected from a Category 4 civilization. But hidden within these seemingly ordinary hulls were revolutionary systems that defied conventional alien engineering principles. Each ship contained modular weapon platforms that could be reconfigured in minutes. Shield generators used phase shift technology that made them nearly invisible until activated. Chief Engineer Patel supervised the installation of a compact drive system in the flagship, the Defiance. "This engine core is 1/8 the size of comparable Confederation drives," she explained to a visiting Admiral Reed, "but generates 300% more thrust. They'll never see it coming." "And our stealth systems?" Reed asked. "Better than expected. Their standard scanners can't differentiate our weapon signatures from basic power systems." Reed nodded with satisfaction. "How many ships will be ready within the year?" 50, Admiral. "Small by their standards, but mighty by any measure that matters," Reed finished. On the far side of the galaxy, the Confederation Council received regular reports about Earth's development. The reports showed exactly what they expected: a small planet slowly building a modest defense force, applying for colonization permits, and generally behaving like a proper primitive species. Admiral Thrix skimmed the latest report with little interest. The humans appear to be accepting their place in the galactic order, he noted to Vorla. The High Diplomat nodded. They're building a few ships, but nothing significant. Exactly as expected from a Category 4 civilization. Their vessel count is up to 50 now, General Cal mentioned. Still tiny by our standards. Hardly worth monitoring, Thrix replied dismissively. They pose no threat and offer little value beyond their mineral resources. Back on Earth, President Morgan stood on the observation deck, watching the first battle group prepare to depart for training exercises in the outer solar system. 50 ships, gleaming in the sunlight, moved with precision that would have impressed even the haughty Confederation officers. Admiral Reed joined her at the window. They're ready, Madam President. And the Confederation still underestimates us. Reed nodded. Completely. Their latest communication still refers to us as the promising but underdeveloped human species. They don't bother to scan our ships closely anymore. Morgan's expression was solemn. Let's hope we never need to show them how wrong they are. As if in answer, an alert chimed on Reed's communicator. He read the message, his face darkening. The Meridians have pushed past the Confederation's outer defenses. 3 systems have fallen already. Morgan stared at the fleet of Earth ships. How long before they reach our sector? At their current pace, 6 months, maybe less. Then we better be ready, she said quietly, watching Earth's tiny but lethal fleet glide silently through space. The emergency alarm blared through the Confederation Command Center on Outpost Station Delta 9. General Cal's 4 eyes blinked rapidly as he absorbed the incoming data. Meridian forces have breached the Cygnus barrier, he announced to the gathered officers. 3 dreadnoughts and 17 support vessels. Admiral Thrix slammed his metallic fist on the console. Impossible. The barrier fleet should have detected their approach. A junior communications officer spoke up nervously. Sir, the barrier fleet has been destroyed. The Meridians used some new cloaking technology. A holographic display updated, showing the rapid advance of Meridian forces through Confederation territory. Red warning indicators flashed across 3 star systems. They're moving faster than we anticipated, General Cal observed. At this rate, they'll reach the Procyon cluster within 2 standard weeks. High Diplomat Vorla entered the command center, her crystalline form reflecting the emergency lights. The Council demands answers, Admiral. How did our defense network fail so completely? Thrix's mandibles clicked in agitation. The Meridians have clearly developed new technologies. We need to mobilize the Central Fleet immediately. Already done, Cal replied. But they're engaged in exercises in the Betelgeuse system. It will take at least 8 days for them to arrive. Vorla's voice was cold. That's unacceptable. The Procyon cluster contains 7 populated worlds and 2 major shipyards. If they fall, I'm aware of the strategic implications. Thrix snapped. What would you have me do? Conjure ships from nothing. The junior communications officer cleared his throat. Sir, the human system lies only 3 days from the Procyon cluster. They have ships. A moment of silence fell over the command center before Admiral Thrix let out a harsh laugh. Those primitive vessels. They'd be destroyed in seconds. The humans are barely past their first warp drives. Vorla tilted her head thoughtfully. We should at least warn them. The Meridians won't distinguish between Confederation worlds and Category 4 civilizations. General Cal nodded reluctantly. Send the warning. Tell them to prepare for possible evacuation. Though what good that will do against a Meridian invasion force. The message traveled across the void of space, reaching Earth's defense headquarters within hours. Admiral Reed reviewed the data with his senior staff in the war room. The Confederation is in trouble, he stated simply. The Meridian advance is faster and more aggressive than any of their previous campaigns. Captain Wilson studied the tactical display. They're using a blitzkrieg strategy. Hit hard, advance quickly, never give the enemy time to regroup. A very human approach, Reed noted with grim appreciation, and one the Confederation's rigid command structure isn't equipped to counter. President Morgan joined the meeting via secure hologram. "What options do we have, Admiral?" Reed pointed to the map. "The Meridians will reach the Procyon cluster in 2 weeks. If it falls, the next system in their path would be ours. The Confederation forces won't arrive in time. And they've asked for our help." Morgan looked skeptical. "No, Madam President. They merely warned us to prepare for the worst. They still consider our fleet insignificant." Morgan's expression hardened. "Your recommendation?" Reed straightened. "Deploy the fleet to the Procyon cluster. Stop the Meridian advance before it reaches Earth. That would reveal our true capabilities." General Hayes objected. "The element of surprise has been our greatest advantage." "True," Reed acknowledged. "But if the Meridians overrun the Confederation's outer systems, we'll face their entire empire alone." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, President Morgan spoke. "Deploy the fleet, Admiral, but make it clear to the Confederation that we're acting in our own defense, not as their subordinates." Within 12 hours, Earth's 50 ships were ready. The Defiance, with Admiral Reed in command, led the formation. Captain Wilson commanded the tactical wing aboard the Resolute. As the ships prepared for departure, Reed addressed the fleet from the bridge of the Defiance. "Men and women of Earth's Defense Force, today we face a choice that will define humanity's place in the galaxy. The Confederation dismissed us. The Meridians don't even know we exist. Both are about to learn a valuable lesson." He paused, looking at the determined faces of his bridge crew. "Our ships may be few, but each one carries the ingenuity and courage that has defined our species since we first looked to the stars. We don't need massive fleets or millennium-old technology. We need heart, skill, and the element of surprise." Engineer Paddle spoke up from her station. "All ships report weapon systems at full capacity, Admiral. Shield modulation systems are synchronized." "Excellent." Reed nodded decisively. "Set course for the Procyon cluster, maximum speed." As Earth's fleet departed the solar system, a Confederation observer satellite recorded their movement. When the report reached Admiral Thrix, he barely glanced at it. "So the humans are fleeing rather than standing their ground. Typical of an underdeveloped species," he commented. "Their 50 tiny ships wouldn't make a difference anyway." General Cal studied the report more carefully. "Curious. Their course doesn't lead to their colony worlds. They appear to be heading toward the Procyon cluster." Thrix's mandibles clicked in surprise. "Are they insane? They're flying directly into the path of the Meridian fleet." Vorla joined them, her crystalline features set in a concerned expression. "Perhaps we misjudged them. Not their capabilities, but their courage." "Courage without power is merely suicide," Thrix replied dismissively. "They've sealed their fate." The tiny human fleet accelerated to speeds that raised a few eyebrows among Confederation analysts, but not enough to challenge their fundamental assumptions. Earth's ships were on a collision course with the greatest military force the sector had seen in centuries. The Procyon cluster glowed like scattered diamonds against the black canvas of space. Once a thriving hub of Confederation commerce, it now stood on the brink of conquest. Meridian warships had already captured the outermost planet and were steadily advancing inward. Admiral Zorax of the Confederation Defense Force observed the battle from his command ship. The glorious Mandate. His scaled skin had lost its luster over the 3 days of continuous conflict. "Status report," he demanded. His second-in-command, Commander Pelax, consulted the holographic display. "We've lost 37 ships, Admiral. The Meridians have lost only 12. At this rate, we cannot hold the cluster." Zorax hissed in frustration. "Where is the Central Fleet?" Still 5 days away, sir. The battle continued to unfold on the main viewer. Meridian ships, angular, predatory vessels with distinctive red markings, methodically demolished the Confederation's defensive line. General Krell, the Meridian commander, was known for his ruthless efficiency. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're detecting new ships entering the system. Zorax turned. Reinforcements? No, sir. Different signatures. They appear to be human vessels. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the command center. Zorax stared at the display in shock as 50 small ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the battle zone. Humans? Those primitives. What possible difference could they make? He laughed bitterly. They've come to witness their future, I suppose. On the main viewer, the human ships moved in a tight formation, led by a vessel that was slightly larger than the others, the Defiance. A communication request flashed on the console. Put them through, Zorax ordered, his tone somewhere between amusement and pity. Admiral Reed's face appeared on screen. Admiral Zorax, this is Admiral James Reed of Earth's Defense Force. We're here to assist against the Meridian invasion. Zorax couldn't contain his incredulity. With 50 ships, the Meridians have over 300 vessels in this sector alone. You should retreat while you still can. Reed's expression remained calm. We appreciate your concern, but we've made our decision. It's your funeral, Zorax replied dismissively. Stay clear of the main battle zones. We cannot be responsible for your safety. As the communication ended, laughter erupted across the Confederation bridge. Did they really think they could help? Commander Pelax asked, mandibles twitching in amusement. Zorax shook his head. The arrogance of youth, both as individuals and as a species. Across the battlefield, General Krell of the Meridian Empire noticed the new arrivals from his flagship, the inevitable conquest. His 6 eyes narrowed as he studied the data. What are these small vessels? He asked his tactical officer. Unknown design, General. Based on their size and configuration, they appear to be from a pre-Council civilization. Minimal threat assessment. Krell's mouth tentacles curled in what passed for a smile among his species. Interesting. The Confederation must be truly desperate if they're recruiting unaligned worlds. He leaned forward in his command chair. Hail them. Let's see who's foolish enough to interfere in affairs beyond their understanding. When Admiral Reed's face appeared on his screen, Krell performed a quick xenobiological analysis. Human. Bictal. Soft-skinned. Unimpressive. I am General Krell of the Meridian Empire. Identify yourselves and state your purpose. Reed nodded respectfully. Admiral James Reed of Earth. We're here to prevent further Meridian expansion into this sector. Krell's laughter was a gurgling sound. With that tiny fleet, my scout division alone outnumbers you 6-1. Numbers aren't everything, General. In war, they usually are, Krell replied. But I admire your species' courage, however misplaced. I'll offer you one chance to withdraw. This isn't your fight. Reed's expression hardened slightly. When someone threatens our galactic neighborhood, it becomes our fight. Krell's tentacles twitched with amusement. Very well. Your ships will make interesting additions to our trophy collection. End transmission. He turned to his tactical officer. Assign Battle Group 6 to eliminate these human vessels. Their destruction should demoralize the remaining Confederation forces. 20 Meridian warships broke formation and moved toward the human fleet. On both sides of the conflict, officers watched with varying degrees of pity and amusement. Aboard the Defiance, Admiral Reed observed the approaching Meridian ships with calm determination. Captain Wilson's voice came through on the tactical channel. They're sending only 20 ships. They're not taking us seriously. Good, Reed replied. Deploy in Formation Delta. Activate all systems, but keep shields in passive mode until my mark. The 50 human ships smoothly shifted positions, spreading out in a pattern that seemed random to observers, but followed a carefully calculated design. On the glorious mandate, Zorax watched with professional curiosity. What are they doing? That formation leaves them vulnerable on multiple vectors. Commander Pilax shrugged. Perhaps it's the best they know. They've never fought in space before. Such a waste of brave lives, Zorax murmured, genuinely regretful. They won't last 5 minutes against Meridian weaponry. As the Meridian battle group closed to firing range, a tense silence fell over both command centers. The humans remained in their seemingly haphazard formation, making no aggressive moves. General Krell gave the order. Fire when ready. The Meridian ships opened fire in perfect synchronization, a devastating barrage that should have annihilated the small human fleet in seconds. What happened next would change the course of the war, and the galaxy's understanding of humanity, forever. The brilliant energy beams from the Meridian warships streaked across space, a deadly light show aimed at the scattered human vessels. Both the Confederation and Meridian observers watched, expecting to see the tiny Earth ships vaporize instantly. Shields at full power now, Admiral Reed commanded. In perfect unison, 50 shimmer fields snapped into existence around the human vessels. The Meridian weapons fire struck these barriers and simply vanished. There was no explosion, no energy dispersion. The attacks were completely absorbed. On the Meridian flagship, General Krell leaned forward in shock. What happened? His weapons officer frantically checked readings. Unknown shield technology, sir. They're absorbing our energy weapons at 100% efficiency. Impossible, Krell hissed. Increase power to maximum. The Meridian ships fired again, this time with their weapons at full capacity. The result was the same. The human shield swallowed the energy without strain. Aboard the Confederation command ship, Admiral Zorax stared in disbelief. How are they doing that? Even our most advanced shields can only deflect or disperse energy weapons, not absorb them completely. Commander Pilax studied the sensor readings. Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the human vessels. Their power output it can't be right. These readings suggest their ships are generating more power than vessels 5 times their size. On the Defiance, Engineer Paddle reported from her station. Shield absorption at 97%, Admiral. Energy reserves increasing. We've captured enough power from their attack to fully charge our main weapons. Reed nodded. Prepare to demonstrate our capabilities. Target the lead Meridian vessel only. Captain Wilson's voice came through the comm. Weapons locked on target, Admiral. Fire. From the seemingly small human ships came a response that defied all expectations. A concentrated beam of blue-white energy, so bright it caused automatic dimming on all observing view screens, lanced out from the Defiance. The beam was narrow, precise, and moved at near light speed. It struck the lead Meridian warship dead center. There was no explosion, no dramatic fire. The beam simply passed through the vessel from bow to stern, leaving a perfect hole. A moment later, the Meridian ship's lights flickered and died as all systems failed simultaneously. Stunned silence fell across both the Confederation and Meridian command centers. General Krell recovered first. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Bring in battle groups 3 and 4 for support. But the human fleet was already in motion. Their seemingly random formation suddenly revealed its purpose as they executed a complex dance that placed them in perfect firing positions. 5 more human ships fired their weapons, and 5 more Meridian vessels went dark. What kind of weapon is that? Zorax demanded. His science officer looked up from his console, mandibles twitching nervously. It appears to be a focused quantum disruption beam. It's not destroying their hull. It's shutting down the molecular bonds in their power systems. I didn't think such technology was possible. On the Meridian flagship, chaos reigned. They're not following standard attack patterns, shouted the tactical officer. I can't predict their movements. Krell watched in growing horror as his carefully organized battle groups tried to engage the nimble human ships. The larger Meridian vessels, designed for impressive but straightforward confrontations, couldn't match the humans' astonishing maneuverability. The human ships moved like liquid mercury, flowing around enemy fire, splitting formations only to reform elsewhere, always presenting the smallest possible target while maintaining clear firing solutions. "Sir," reported Commander Pilax to Admiral Zorax, "the humans are using some kind of inertial manipulation we've never seen before. Their acceleration and course changes should be tearing their ships apart, but they're moving as if momentum doesn't apply to them." Zorax watched as a human vessel, no larger than a scout ship, evaded fire from 3 Meridian cruisers, spinning on its axis while maintaining its course, then fired a precision shot that disabled all 3 pursuers with a single beam. They'd been hiding their true capabilities, Zorax realized aloud. All this time, the battle continued to unfold with shocking one-sidedness. Not a single human ship had been hit, while over 30 Meridian vessels now drifted powerless in space. General Krell slammed his fist on his command console. How can this be happening? They're just a primitive species with a handful of ships. His communications officer turned from his station. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship." Admiral Reed's calm face appeared on screen. "General Krell, your ships are being disabled, not destroyed. We have no desire for unnecessary casualties. Stand down your forces and withdraw from Confederation space." Krell's facial tentacles writhed in fury. "This is impossible. What are you?" Reed's expression remained unchanged. "Just humans, General. You should have done your research." As the transmission ended, one of Krell's advisors approached cautiously. "Sir, our intelligence was clearly flawed. These are not the primitives we were led to believe." Krell stared at the tactical display where the tiny dots representing human ships continued their deadly dance around his once mighty fleet. "No," he said quietly. "They are something else entirely." From the Confederation flagship, Admiral Zorax watched the impossible unfold before him. 50 ships from a Category 4 civilization, systematically dismantling one of the most feared fleets in the galaxy. "We made a terrible mistake," he whispered. The space around the Procyon cluster had transformed into a chaotic battlefield. Disabled Meridian ships drifted silently, while others frantically maneuvered to avoid the deadly precision of human weapons. The remaining Meridian forces regrouped around their flagship, the inevitable conquest, forming a defensive perimeter. "All ships maintain distance from the human vessels," General Krell ordered, his voice no longer filled with contempt, but with grim determination. "Launch all fighter squadrons. Their small ships can't possibly intercept hundreds of fighters." Like angry insects, over 400 Meridian fighters poured from their carrier ships, small but deadly craft designed to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer numbers. From the Defiance, Admiral Reed observed the new development with calm assessment. "They're adapting. Captain Wilson, deploy Raven Squadron." "Yes, Admiral," Wilson responded from the Resolute. "Ravens, you're up." 10 sleek black craft, smaller than the Meridian fighters, launched from various human ships. They looked insignificant against the swarm of enemies approaching. On the Confederation flagship, Admiral Zorax watched with concern. "Those humans are brave, but foolish. 10 against 400. They'll be annihilated." Commander Pilax nodded in agreement. "Should we launch our remaining fighters to assist them?" Before Zorax could answer, the battle took another unexpected turn. The 10 Raven fighters suddenly split into a perfect formation, then accelerated to speeds that seemed impossible for craft their size. Their movements were so quick that tracking systems struggled to follow them. As the Meridian fighter swarm approached, the Ravens executed a maneuver that left observers stunned. Each human fighter released what appeared to be small metallic spheres, hundreds of them, directly into the path of the incoming Meridian fighters. "What are those?" Zorax asked. His science officer adjusted the sensors. "Some kind of microdrones. They're each about the size of a fist." The microdrones activated simultaneously, each emitting a small but powerful electromagnetic pulse. As the Meridian fighters flew into the cloud of drones, their systems began shutting down one by one. Fighters tumbled out of formation, their engines dead, weapons offline. General Krell watched in horror as his fighter squadrons fell like rain, disabled without firing a single shot. Impossible. Their technology defies all known principles. Meanwhile, the main human fleet executed a daring maneuver. 20 ships formed a spear-like formation and drove straight toward the heart of the remaining Meridian fleet, directly at the inevitable conquest. "They're targeting your flagship, General," warned the tactical officer. "Recommend immediate evasive action." Krell's tentacles writhed with fury. "I will not retreat. All ships, concentrate fire on that formation." The Meridian warships unleashed everything they had, a barrage that should have vaporized any approaching vessels. Yet the human ships continued their advance, their shields absorbing the onslaught while leaving their offensive capabilities uncompromised. As they closed distance, the human ships suddenly split into smaller groups of 5, executing a complex pattern that surrounded several key Meridian vessels. On the Defiance, Admiral Reed gave his next order: deploy the boarding teams. From each human ship, small cylindrical objects shot toward the targeted Meridian vessels. Within seconds, they attached to the hulls and began burning through. "They're boarding our ships," Krell shouted in disbelief. "How are they penetrating our hull armor so quickly?" Inside the Meridian vessels, chaos erupted as human boarding teams in sleek combat suits moved with extraordinary speed and coordination. Led by Captain Wilson himself, they systematically secured engine rooms and command centers. Wilson's voice crackled over the comm as his team reached the engine core of a Meridian dreadnought. "Engine rooms secured. Placing shutdown devices now." One by one, the largest Meridian warships went dark, their weapon systems and engines completely disabled by the boarding teams. Watching this unfold, Admiral Zorax could hardly believe his eyes. Their coordination is perfect. It's as if they've been training for this specific battle for years. In truth, they had. Earth's simulations had predicted exactly how the Meridians would respond, and they had prepared accordingly. As the battle reached its climax, Admiral Reed opened a direct channel to General Krell. "Your fleet is crippled, General. Most of your ships are disabled, not destroyed. We've taken care to minimize casualties. This is your final opportunity to surrender." Krell stared at the tactical display. Nearly 70% of his once mighty fleet was powerless in space. The remaining ships were surrounded by human vessels that had proven impervious to their weapons. "How did you do this?" he asked, his voice barely containing his rage. "Your species was supposed to be primitive, weak." "A common misconception," Reed replied evenly. "We let the galaxy believe what it wanted about us, while we prepared for the day we would need to defend ourselves. That day has come." As if to emphasize Reed's point, the Defiance moved into position directly above the inevitable conquest, its weapons locked on the command center. General Krell looked around his bridge. His officers stared back, awaiting his decision. The mighty Meridian Empire, which had never known defeat, now faced annihilation at the hands of a species they had dismissed as insignificant. With trembling tentacles, Krell activated the ship-wide communication system. "All Meridian forces, stand down. I repeat, stand down." Across the battlefield, Meridian ships powered down their weapons. The impossible had happened. 50 human ships had defeated a fleet of hundreds. Admiral Zorax watched in awe as the human vessels moved into formation around the surrendered Meridian flagship. "We have much to learn," he said quietly, "about our new allies." The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Confederation buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 27 species filled the massive circular room, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and rumbles. At the center of the chamber stood a single podium, currently empty but soon to be occupied by the most talked-about beings in the galaxy. High Diplomat Vorla swept into the chamber, her crystalline form catching the light as she took her position at the head of the council table. Admiral Thrix and General Cal followed, their postures noticeably less confident than usual. "This emergency session of the Confederation Council is now in session," Vorla announced, Her voice amplified throughout the chamber. Today, we welcome representatives from Earth to address recent events in the Procyon cluster. A hush fell over the assembly as the doors slid open. Admiral Reed entered, flanked by Captain Wilson and Engineer Pottle. Their simple blue uniforms stood in stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial garb of the council members. Admiral James Reed of Earth, Vorla introduced, her tone carefully neutral. You have the floor. Reed approached the podium with measured steps. He surveyed the alien faces before him. Some curious, some hostile, many simply confused. Thank you for your invitation, Reed began. 3 weeks ago, Earth deployed a fleet of 50 ships to defend the Procyon cluster against Meridian aggression. Today, I'm pleased to report that the Meridian forces have fully withdrawn from Confederation space and signed a preliminary peace agreement. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A tall, insectoid representative stood. With respect, Admiral, we find these claims difficult to reconcile with our understanding of your species' capabilities. I understand your confusion, Counselor, Reed replied calmly. Your assessment of Earth was based on what we allowed you to see. Admiral Thrix rose from his seat, mandibles clicking rapidly. Are you suggesting you deliberately missiled the Confederation? We were cautious, Reed corrected. When we first met, you made it clear that Earth would be relegated to Category 4 status, essentially a protected, subordinate world. You dismissed our ships as primitive and our technology as unremarkable. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. Rather than argue, we decided to let our actions speak for us when the time came. General Cal leaned forward. The reports from the Procyon engagement described weapons and shield technology far beyond anything in our records. How did your species develop such capabilities without our knowledge? Engineer Patel stepped forward at Reed's gesture. Your assumption that bigger means more advanced led you to overlook our approach. While Confederation and Meridian ships rely on massive energy reactors, we focused on efficiency and miniaturization. She activated a holographic display showing the internal schematics of a human vessel. Our ships generate more power per cubic meter than any vessel in the Confederation fleet. Our weapons don't need to be physically large to be effective. The chamber erupted in excited discussion. Species that had previously ignored Earth's representatives now leaned forward with intense interest. Captain Wilson added, Your tactical doctrines are also predictable. Both Confederation and Meridian forces rely on rigid formations and overwhelming numbers. We developed flexible, adaptive strategies specifically designed to counter these approaches. A dignified reptilian counselor raised a scaled hand. If your technology is so superior, why reveal it only now? Why not earlier? Admiral Reed's expression remained neutral. We hoped it would never be necessary. Earth has no imperial ambitions. We sought peaceful integration into the galactic community, but as equals, not subordinates. High Diplomat Vorla stood, silencing the chamber. Admiral Reed, in light of recent events, the Provisional Council proposes to reclassify Earth as a Category 1 civilization, with all associated rights and privileges. We also extend an invitation for Earth to join the High Council effective immediately. Reed exchanged glances with his colleagues before responding. Earth appreciates the offer, High Diplomat. However, we have our own proposal. He stepped closer to the council table. The current classification system reinforces hierarchy rather than cooperation. We propose replacing it with a collaborative framework where all species contribute according to their unique strengths. Shocked whispers filled the chamber. No one had ever challenged the fundamental structure of the Confederation before. Admiral Thrix rose in objection. This is outrageous. You can't simply waltz in and demand we restructure our entire civilization. We're not demanding anything, Reed replied evenly. We're suggesting a better path forward, one that might have prevented the Meridian conflict entirely. A system that dismisses lesser species inevitably overlooks valuable contributions and creates resentment. High Diplomat Vorla's crystalline features reflected the chamber's lights as she considered Reed's words. Your proposal is unprecedented, but recent events suggest that perhaps our current approach has limitations we fail to recognize. She turned to the assembled council. I propose a special committee to explore Earth's recommendations, with Admiral Reed serving as co-chair. The vote that followed wasn't unanimous, but the majority was clear. The galaxy was changing. As the session concluded, Admiral Zorax approached Reed privately. "I owe you an apology, Admiral. I dismissed your ships, your people, based on ignorance and arrogance." Reed offered his hand in the human gesture of friendship. "We all have something to learn from each other, Admiral." As Earth's representatives departed the chamber, the council members continued their animated discussions. The story of how a tiny fleet of human ships had changed the balance of power in the galaxy would be told for generations to come. On the journey back to Earth, Captain Wilson joined Admiral Reed on the observation deck of the Defiance. The stars streaked by as they traveled at speeds that had once seemed impossible. "Do you think they'll ever truly accept us as equals?" Wilson asked. Reed smiled slightly. "They already have. They just don't all realize it yet." Engineer Patel joined them, holding a datapad. "The Confederation's requesting our shield specifications. Apparently, they're eager to explore technological exchange opportunities." "I imagine they are," Reed chuckled. "Share what you think appropriate. After all, that's what allies do." As the Defiance led the human fleet home, news of their victory spread across the stars. Throughout the galaxy, other overlooked primitive species took note. The era of dismissing smaller, younger civilizations was coming to an end. No one would mock a tiny fleet again, especially if it contained human ships.